Hello class, today we're going to be talking about information literacy. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we need to address is, well, what is information literacy? So it is defined as the ability to identify, find, evaluate, and use information effectively. So those four key words there, you have identify, then you have find, then you have evaluate, and then you have use. So I'm going to show you guys a little YouTube video that I think sums this up pretty well. All right.
Oh, hi. Today we're going to talk about information literacy. Information literacy? Information literacy is the ability to recognize an information need, whether it be personal or academic, find the information appropriate to that need, assess whether or not the information will fulfill your need, and finally, use the information appropriately. Like what? Like this. Oh, my stomach. This looks helpful. I need to make an appointment. That was a lovely example of information literacy needs as applied to personal issues. Going forward, we're going to take a real quick look at information literacy needs in the context of academic research.
Be sure in writing your paper to use peer-reviewed articles.
Oh, hi. I need peer-reviewed articles. The most important thing to remember is that you start your research at library.armstrong.edu. For articles, you'll want to follow the link for ProQuest Research Library. In order to ensure that your articles are peer-reviewed, you simply check the box for peer-reviewed. Additionally, be super sure that you check the box for full text as well. You tell the system what you're looking for peer-reviewed articles about, hit the search screen, and you've got 403 articles, all peer-reviewed. After you've run your search, you've got a list of peer-reviewed articles from different periodicals. Now you assess the articles and find out which ones are going to be most useful to you. You take a look at the title of the article, as well as the author information, the name of the journal it was originally published in, and the year that it was published. The database automatically sorts your returns by relevance. It has brought the ones to the top of the list that it thinks are most relevant to your search. If, however, you would like to take a look at the most recent ones, you can resort your results by most recent articles to the top. After you click on the title, be sure to email yourself a copy of the article. When the article comes to your email, the PDF will be attached to the email. PDFs are important because when you use the article in the in-text citations, the page numbers at the PDF are accurate, and you need those page numbers in the in-text citations of your paper.
Okay, so that was just a little video kind of describing what that's about. So, now the video used the word need instead of identify and assess instead of evaluate, but those two terms are essentially the same. So that kind of gave you some practical examples as to what information literacy is and how it can be used. So along those lines, we're going to ask the question, why use it? Why is it important? So whenever we're looking stuff up online, we can't just assume that everything is reliable, and we can't just assume that we can trust the information that we're using. So we have to be able to sift through it and try and find the pieces of information that are going to be best for whether it's our project or our essay, but also we need to make sure that what we're using is actually true. So that's one of the main first ones, is website credibility, and we'll talk about that a little later on. And then also advertising intentions, that's a big thing. On certain websites, you know, if there are pop-up ads on the side that are trying to get you to buy a certain product, most of the time that website isn't that reliable. And then also search result accuracy. So we're wanting to make sure that we are going to the best place to be able to search for these articles or these pieces of information so that we can make sure that we are getting the best information possible. So once again, I have another video that I'd like to show you. And it's just kind of talking about some other different ways why information literacy is important. Go ahead and open that. All right. Yeah, so that provided some reasons why it's important. It mentioned that it helps understand, copyrights. It helps students understand what plagiarism is, which is very important, and just making sure that you're picking information out of, like I said, the rubbish, So let's go ahead and move on to some of the key words that are involved in information literacy. Ironically, the first is keywords. So, keywords are the words that you would use to search for information about a topic. So information literacy really helps you understand what words are the most necessary and are going to be the most effective to use to search for the best piece of information that you can find. The next word is plagiarism. So I kind of touched on this briefly. It's using some or all of somebody's work or idea and saying that you created it. So information literacy is important because it informs students on how to cite material, whether that information needs, cited or not. So it's a very important tool, and plagiarism is a very serious thing, especially when you get into college. So it's best that we're practicing, good techniques whenever we're in elementary school or middle school or high school, because that is definitely something that will continue to be a present into your schooling years. So let's keep going. We have advertisement. So I touched on this a little bit. An advertisement is a message that draws attention to a product and encourages people to buy it. So most of the time, if you're on a website and it is encouraging you to buy something, whether that's from that website or from a different website, most of the time that website isn't that reliable because its main purpose is for you to purchase something rather than just for you to get correct information. So keep an eye out for those. And then your last vocab word is strategy. So strategy is a course of action designed to help you reach a specific goal or result. So whenever going into an essay or a research project, you should always have a strategy. Knowing which search engine to use, knowing what keywords you're going to use, how to assess and evaluate those, and I'm going to give you some tips about that later on. So the next thing is some questions that we need to ask ourselves. So first off, I'm going to show you this video that talks about how do we know if a source is reliable. So let's go ahead and watch that.
How to know if a source is reliable. I'll watch on. Meet Maria. She's always cutting corners. When she encounters a young man selling supposedly brand-name purses out of the trunk of his car, she thinks she's found the best deal ever. Until then, Maria discovers that Burberry handbag she covets is actually made by Barbary in China, out of plastic. While anyone with half a brain should know that a designer clutch for sale at a street vendor isn't the real thing, even the savviest writers sometimes have difficulty discerning whether a source is reliable or super shady. all sorts of marvelous information and caricatures. The internet is also rife with gossip and outright lies, which is why we have to be very, very careful when using online sources. If we're pulling content from the official pages of the White House, Walmart, or a reputable newspaper like the New York Times, then the information we're using is probably safe, given that it's been uploaded with the full weight of the U.S. government, the Walton family, and the liberal media machine behind it. Wikipedia, however, does not make the cut as a reliable source. Anyone, absolutely anyone, can log on to Wikipedia and edit articles. Random blog posts with anonymous authors also don't constitute reliable sources. This brings us to our next criteria for determining reliability. Whether the source we're interested in is a book, a piece in an academic journal, or an article taken off the internet, we have to ask, who's the author? Well, the author of a reliable source will be respected in his or her field of study and will cite his or her sources so we can fact check to our heart's content. For example, if we're writing an essay about President William Howard Taft and his enormous bathtub, we should look for source materials written by noted historians, Taft's family, friends, and other contemporaries, or maybe even by President Taft himself. We also need to know when a source was written in order to decide whether it's reliable or not. Say we're writing a paper about yellow fever. While medical texts hailing from the era of the building of the Panama Canal might be interesting, a source penned more than 100 years ago doesn't tell us much about where yellow fever is prevalent today or why, and what people can do to protect themselves from bleeding all over the furniture. Anyway, in other words, a reliable source is appropriate for the topic and the time we're writing about. Alright, well here's another criteria for determining the reliability of a source. What's the author's purpose? Alright, while some authors set out to provide an objective look at a topic, others will have an agenda because they have very strong feelings about the subject, or perhaps because their research was sponsored by an organization with a particular outlook. It's our job when searching for sources to identify where the author is coming from, the reason they're coming from there, and if their viewpoint is reliable enough to include in our own work. For example, say we're writing a paper on pesticide use in the United States. Well, we find an article written by a biologist who claims that a particular pesticide used on corn doesn't negatively affect human health, even though a dozen other biologists and a dozen other academic papers have come to the opposite conclusion. Given how very different biologist A's stance is on our pesticide from the rest of the scientific community, it's of the utmost importance that we determine whether he's reliable or not. In this case, a quick search determines that biologist A's study was sponsored by the company that manufactures the pesticide. And yes, people do that. Sorry, biologist A, but we vote you off the island, and over here we have things. Alright, we've discussed how reliable sources will have authors who know what they're talking about and who are willing to put their names on their work. Reliable sources will be relevant to our topic and will have citations that allow us to check the source's veracity. While we can look online for reliable sources, we know to be cautious about what we find on the internet. One last question. Why does it matter whether we use reliable sources or not? Well, whether we're producing a paper for school or for an employer, we're putting our names on something. We're saying that what we've written can be relied upon. When our own reputations are on the line with our peers, our teachers, our employers, etc., we must take the extra time, and really it isn't much, to make sure that the information we use to back our opinions is good and real and honest. Otherwise, well,
Okay, awesome. So, that gave, a lot of information on how to know if a source is reliable, and I kind of touch on this a little bit. The first thing that I would suggest you ask yourself is this source trustworthy? And for me personally, if you're not using like a search engine like Google Scholar, or something that you know is going to only produce peer-reviewed articles, then I